Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Datuk Muhammad Umar Swift, CEO of Bursa Malaysia, Mr. Christopher Lee, CEO of Share Investor Malaysia, Ladies and gentlemen, I find it quite awkward to be here today because I don't belong to the kind of crowd who usually go to events like this. There are two types of people who want to grow the money. We all want to grow our money, but there are two types of people generally. The first type are people like you who, as Dr. Umar mentioned, put efforts to really find the best value and the most genuine ways to grow your money. The second type is the people like me who were lazy. I put all my money into robocall, so I don't have to think about the nitty-gritty of picking which counter to do it. But it's as Dr. Umar mentioned just now, retail investors are a crucial element to growing our economy and helping businesses grow together with the country. So thank you very much for inviting me and having me today. This sounds a bit dry, especially when I have to compete with so many things happening in this hall and the other hall. But give me a bit, almost like 15 minutes, just to at least explain what we are trying to do with the economy, because as retail investors, it is very important to align your bets with the right companies that are growing in alignment with where the country is going. The strategy of running an economy is not unlike an investment strategy. I've been in different tasks and different positions throughout my career. I've been in a huge organization.
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry, Siri always do this.
It's all good.
Yeah. I've been running my own startup, so I understand the pain points of private companies trying to grow and offer value. And now I'm running the long-term macroeconomic planning for the country. So it's not that much difference. Of course, there are intricacies, but more or less it's about managing our limited resources. We have limited resources at hand. We have to think about the trade-offs and opportunity costs when we decide where to place our bets. It's the same with you finding the counters, is the same with us running the economy. We have a time horizon ahead of us, and timing our investments right will make a huge difference. Most of all, whether in economic strategy or investment strategy, the oldest rule is that the actions that we take now will have an enormous impact on the future. That's why people always tell me where to go. And that's why part of the reasons I dabble into startups before I took this job. Because my view is this: for people who came in late, you make money but not as much. The real skill is looking at something that other people have not seen or have the foresight of how the value will grow in the future. Having the right skill, right understanding, right assessments, then you will be able to see these hidden gems, and by knowing this and putting your money in it, Not only that you will make money, but you will also help the company, the economy offers a much more value multiples in the future. People who invested in Apple now make money, I suppose, but not as much as those who started all those years back. In the same way that people who put money in tech companies like Google 25 years ago make a lot more money than those who just realize that tech counters offer multiple of values in the future. So that's the view, and also that's the discipline that we have at our ministry. We know the task is to look at these hidden potentials, knowing our strength, take a very long-term view and grows it. There will be a lag of understanding in the beginning, but eventually the country, the economy, retail investors like you will be able to understand the kind of value creation that we intend to focus, at least in the next few years. The Ministry of Economy is a coordinating ministry that is tasked to do long-term planning that will fundamentally change the structure of our economy. The decisions we make today will have a compounding effect on the future, and that's my difficulty, because my ministry and my job is not designed to simply fulfill populist pledges like giving more handouts under different names or announcing expensive mega projects that only benefit certain groups of people. We've done this for the last 20 years. And we have that difficulty now because society has become accustomed to that. The measure of economic plans to sections of our society is how much more money governments will announce to go directly to your pocket. The more you announce, the more you are seen to be a better manager of the economy. A few years back, well, not a few years back, but 10, 15 years back, the approach was to go on massive mega projects, especially infrastructure projects, that created excitement with investors, but left the country with 1.6 trillion debts now. So, just like all of you, I'm constrained by all this. We are not going to do what we have done in the past because the trade-offs and the costs were too much for future generations. But we are confident enough to know that if we do this right, if we no longer think of growth in terms of, not just in terms of pure GDP numbers, but we also have to account for the quality, pace, and sustainability of the growth. These are the kind of economic robustness that will bring back the luster to our economy and will have a spillover to the stock market. That means when we assess how our economy is going, we must account for the holistic changes that are planned and undertaken and not simply resort to bite-sized, knee-jerk snapshot approach of what had happened. That's also my difficulty. Just like Dr. Omar mentioned, is about financial literacy, is about awareness for investors like you. We have a bigger task at the government to bring this kind of understanding and appreciation of a long-term view of economic robustness. Of course, in the short term, there will be ups and downs, and we are going through very difficult weeks for the last few weeks. This happens. As well as we will be going through implementing challenges when we focus on long-term structural reforms. Then we also have external headwinds, and those are all outside our control. These are the natural facets of the economy. The global economy is like that. It will happen that in the natural cycle of the global economy, it will have its ups and downs. But to assess accurately how we are doing, and I keep repeating myself to everyone every day about this, because we need to change how society views economic planning and economic growth. For us to be fair and to be competitive in the long run, we must take a long-term view and see whether this government is undertaking the necessary. Hang on, I actually have a problem with my Siri. It's trying to talk to me. Hang on, This is a problem when your key points are actually on your iPad. That's why I don't buy Apple stock. I have this love and hate relationship with Siri every now and then, either at my Apple Watch or at my iPad or at my iPhone or my MacBook. Anyway, now coming back to that, of course, the short-term stabilization measures were also done, and I hope as we go month by month, you will see this, and we will be able to roll this out to keep everything under control. This government came into power at the peak of global inflation, where food prices soared to historic heights. By focusing on a series of stabilization measures, as much as cost of living remains the highest priority of everyone, we have seen inflation numbers have come under control, and we have seen 11 straight months of moderating inflation, and my view is that it will continue to moderate. The GDP growth has also exceeded expectations, and this provides us a window of opportunity. And the window of opportunity that we have earned from this stabilization is necessary so that we have time and space to undertake longer-term structural measures. Ladies and gentlemen, now we've been talking about structural measures all the time. What are these in the context of Malaysian economy? This is my view, and this is what the government is trying to do. Structural reforms are the opposite of running things business as usual. We've communicated this to government departments, we've worked with our partners. Not only that the policy has to change, even the manner that we conduct ourselves, our interface with our stakeholders also have to change from the business as usual approach that has been there for the last 2-3 decades. It is a dramatic shift to how the country, industry and market operates. The need for structural reforms have become irrefutable. Everyone talks about it, to the point that sometimes it creates a cynicism in society, because Malaysia has been talking about structural reforms for almost 2 decades. We know that our country's growth will be affected if we continue to incur high debts with high committed payments taken away from actual development. We know the situations with the debt. We know the situation with the debt servicing charges that we have to incur every year. We also know if we continue to operate in a low-skill, low-value, low-wage environment, that's not going to work anymore. And we also know if society's inequality remains persistent and social safety net stays neither adequate nor sufficient, that's also not robust. as far as our growth is concerned. So these are all the constraints and parameters we have to work with for the economy at the macro planning to make sure that we move the needle consistently, and I hope our industries, our companies understand that in this march for structural reforms, we need everyone to be on board. For those of you who look at the global stock market, you would also accept that Malaysia's stock market profile does not carry the same luster as other countries. We all know that. I check Bloomberg every day, 3 to 4 times a day. I make sure that I have food at hand when I check Bloomberg, because it can be quite depressing in the last few months. The stocks that dominate our counter reflect our past history than giving an exciting promise of the future. And I've been quite blunt about it. When I talk to retail investors, fund managers, we have to accept that while Malaysia's companies on Bursa offers steady growth, security of returns, but I suppose because we want to grow our money, it's always about looking for those counter, not just for the steady growth and security of returns, but the kind of counters that gives a glimpse of the future. And we have to do a lot more to grow the economy so that our Bursa can feature and offer these exciting companies and corporations to investors. My discussions with fund managers, bankers and investors prove to me that technology and innovation must gain prominence once again in our economy if we want to lead the region. And that, I hope, explains the kind of focus the Ministry of Economy has been giving in the last 6 months. Because a lot of people don't really understand what structural reforms and value creation for the long term is all about. I have difficulties explaining to people that when we talk and debottleneck the ecosystem for tech, digitalization and innovation, it is not because I want to be the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. That's not my job. I'm not the regulator. I don't intend to be the Minister for Communications and Digital. That's their job. But we understand enough for us to grow and pivot the economy, tech, innovation, and another area is renewables. These are key thrusts of the economy, and we need to do more to bring more businesses, more workforce, more people to be involved in all these high value, high growth sectors so that Malaysia can lead the region. And these are the few things that we are focusing as part of our structural reforms in the next few years. One, we have undertaken vital institutional reforms in stemming out corruption and practicing high standards of governance. No developed country has succeeded to rampant corruption and institutional distrust. We all know that. Setting this right from the start was a key reform that we have pushed. When we first formed the government, there were many questions about why the Prime Minister took the position of Finance Minister himself. It was part of a grand plan. We knew enough that the easiest but the most difficult task of all the reforms that we have to do for the economy is governance, because it is about building the trust and confidence back into the economy. The Finance Ministry handles the procurement for the government. The planning, the budgetary, the process, everything else is done at different ministries, but only the finance ministry can award projects. The final sign-off is actually at the finance ministry. That was why in the past everyone wants to be a finance minister, because you have the power to choose or, well, to, you know the rest. That means that you have to deal with monsters. The status quo of vested interests who have benefited from government procurements and public purse all these years. Now, I may have the background in finance. Anyone else may have the background in finance. But the trick about being a very good finance minister to bring back the confidence in the economy is not whether you really understand your macroeconomics. It's about managing government's procurement to make sure that we drastically plug the leakages. And who better to do that than the most senior chief executive in the country? And that's the reason why the Prime Minister is a finance minister, so that he can focus on stemming out corruption very quickly, not just because it will save us money, but because it is very important as part of a grand plan for economic reforms to quickly get back the confidence and trust from the market and from society. That's why if you have noticed, the Prime Minister has focused a lot on corruption, on integrity, on governance. Because while we can plan, while we can have so many blueprints, our litmus test is how the market and society responds to those blueprints. And that's very much about the intangible trust and confidence that unless we very quickly show it in the way that we manage our procurement, our project, we manage our fiscal responsibility, all the other blueprints may just become blueprints and never see the light of the day. That's why the second reform that I think we have done considerably well in the last 6 months is the fiscal responsibility. We've done fiscal consolidation in ensuring that the government spends prudently and fairly so that we could reduce our fiscal deficit and ensure financial sustainability in the long term. This may not be talked about too much from the financial circle. There's a lot of talks about it, about subsidies retargeting. The efforts of retargeting subsidies is important so that the most deserving people receive the help they need and we reduce instances of wastage and abuse. We all know that. This has been spoken for the last 20 years. And I'm proud to be a part of administration that finally walked the talk despite the possible political costs that we have to endure. If we could keep our target of reducing the fiscal deficit to 3.5%, and we are extremely committed to that, retail investors may not be as particular about it, but bond investors, institutional investors are extremely particular about our commitment to reducing our fiscal deficit, because it is a measure of how serious we are about governance. So if we can keep this to the 3.5% deficit reduction target in 2025, while at the same time meeting our GDP growth targets, I'm sure the confidence will come back to our economy as foreign investors, local entrepreneurs, retail investors like you will believe that this government walks the talks and we are serious in reforms, albeit all the political costs that we have to go through in the next 1 or 2 years. And of course, the third reforms is something that I've been talking for the last 6 months, is to make sure that our resource allocation for the nation pivots to high growth, high value sectors, such as the technology, the renewable energy, and food tech and food security. For these three areas, we stand a real chance of taking a leadership position in this country, in this region, if we set the right path forward and we stick to it. And I've repeated it over and over again, nothing great can be done without a few must-haves. First, you must have the first few people who really believe in it. That you believe this can be done, no matter how difficult and no matter how loud the noise of detractors out there. And secondly, the must-have is that you must have someone who have a thick skin to avoid and to ignore all these noises, because you must stay long enough on the problem. It will take some time to move a needle in the beginning, and it will go through an inflection point, and from there on, it will take its course on its own. These are the chosen focus area because the opportunity sizes are among the largest. And if we succeeded, the compounding returns that bring forth the developments of other industries will be the highest as well. I was in Qatar, the Qatar Economic Forum last week. I was very encouraged with the positive vibe and interest that we have, because I have to shuffle between a cynical society that we have here, about we've had 20 years of not being able to pull off what we intended to do. So when we went to Qatar and we say that we want to be a regional leader and the nerve center for energy transition in this region, there was a lot of excitement. And part of the excitement, because they knew that we are coming out with a series of roadmaps with specific projects and investment value that they can participate. They knew that for us to be a regional leader in energy transition, the country will have to invest $150 billion in the next 25 years. And that excites everyone. And that's the kind of structural reforms that we hope we will be able to continue in the next few years. And the final part, this is the part that most probably most companies or employers will cringe, and it will cause us some political support. With all the things that we are doing, you can do governance, you can do fiscal consolidation, we can continue to grow, we can move the resource to the high growth, high value sectors, but we cannot achieve the sustainable and robust economic growth that we aim for if we don't go through a generational labor reforms. Labor reforms are critical to change the talent pool in the country. And that's one key pillar of what we are doing at the Economic Ministry. It's not because I want to take over the Minister of Human Resource job. It's very economic. Talent pool and workforce is the catalyst that we need to pivot to the next level of value. So let me try to put it in condensing like this. We understand that even if we rightly identify the strategic business and put long-term money and commitment into growing them, we could not succeed without having the right skills and talents. And foreign direct investments look more for the quality of workforce than the infrastructure that you offer nowadays. Granted that this is a very difficult and continuous task, that even The most developed countries have not fully grasped how to go about this. Given how quickly in demand skills are changing, but that also means that our country stands an equal chance of succeeding in building a sustainable and reliable talent pipeline, provided we undertake skills programs at a large scale. We need depth, quality, flexibility in our programs, but the one insight that could not be ignored. This is the bit that I think we will do very differently. People talk about quality, people talk about syllabus, people talk about many things, but you may have the quality, you may have the resources, everything, but at the stage of our economy now, we can only move the needle if we do it at a national scale. Scale is the biggest challenge of all when it comes to improving our workforce and skills. Something that is sizable enough to make a meaningful difference to the structure of the economy. And the best part of my job is this: while all these are great challenges, I take comfort in one thing. For the first time in a generation, our unity government is the stablest, with a 2/3 majority that can allow people like me and my ministry and other stakeholders, people like Dr. Umar, for us to get down to business and focus on the reforms that we have to put in the next few years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportune time to get structural reforms, because technology is also at its sweet spot between cost and value. The speed of advancements and government investments through the decades in other parts of the world have meant that technology cost is low enough for widespread adoption in Southeast Asia. As proven time and time again, the acceleration to economic growth is the highest when tied with technology and innovation, and government intends to lead technology acceleration with the rolling out of GovTech in the months to come. Therefore, I am actually quite optimistic. I was asked over and over again, what do I feel about the prospect of Malaysian economy? I've maintained that I'm cautiously optimistic. Cautious because there are things out of our control. The global headwinds, the concerns about global economic slowdown, how things are in China, this will continue to impact us. But optimistic because we know what we are doing. And I hold true to those two things, that you need early believers, you need committed people in the beginning, but you also need to stay long enough on the problem. And I think with the majority and the stability that we have in this country now, we will have enough time to pull this off. Therefore, let us be reminded that the actions we take today, my actions, Christopher's actions, your actions, will have a substantial impact on the future. That is also true for investing. I hope you understand and can align how you want to park the money with how the government intends to pivot the economy. The fruits of labor of our work will only be evident in the next 2 to 3 years to come, and in fact for some reforms maybe even longer. But I hope that when we put the foundational pieces together and bring the private sectors on board, you could appreciate the moment in history and know that we are in the right direction. When I was in industry, and I was in the petrochemical and oil and gas, especially in the petrochemical, we knew one thing: economies go through a cycle. What goes up must come down. The best of companies are the ones who were robust enough to go through a downturn cycle and have enough capacity to build and prepare for the next upcycle. So the point that you go into with your next capacity building, with your next product, with your next market is extremely important, because you know enough to align. As we were landing the down cycle, you've already started the work to build more capacities, so that as demands picked up 3-4 years down cycle, you are the first person to reap the benefits of the upcycle. That's my task. That's also your task, because as retail investors, you really need to know, unlike me who just depend on robocall, you really need to know when is to invest, so that when discounters and the economy picks up later on, you got in at a much cheaper price, so that you get the best margin when you exit. So with that, I welcome feedback and suggestions on how we can collectively steer our economy throughout this uncertainty for our common future. The government's obligation is to diagnose our challenges, anticipate the road ahead, and decide where to place our bets. Not that much different from your task with your money. The genius of the private sector is, now that you know where the country wants to place the bets, the genius of the private sector and investors is finding the path to commercialization, to accelerate and to scale up. And the government will continue to remain supportive by building an ecosystem that enables the best to thrive and create a safety net for those who missed. But we would rely on you to do what you do best, which is to find value. So thank you for having me for this event. I know it's a lengthy lecture, but we don't get to meet so often, and I hope you make enough money to pay tax in the next 1 year. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.